Chapter 1. End of the Dream. Good evening. What's going on here? Irie's voice hung in the night air, softer than he intended, yet heavy enough to cut through the tension crackling around him. Bianca flinched at the sound of his voice. She didn't look up. Instead, her fingers tightened around the hem of her dress, her breathing shallow. At her feet, suitcases sat neatly packed, small and rigid, like final nails in a coffin. Something was wrong. Irie's heart pounded, his grip tightening around the strap of his guitar. He took a step closer, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Bianca?" His voice was softer this time, cautious. She exhaled shakily. When she finally spoke, her words were quiet but razor sharp. "Irie, I'm sorry, but this isn't working out." The world seemed to tilt beneath him. He blinked, the words hitting like an unexpected blow to the gut. "What?" Her shoulders tensed. She still wouldn't need his gaze. "My parents, they've made a decision," she said, voice steady now, almost mechanical. Irie let out a hollow laugh, glancing around at the silent figures behind her. Her father, Calvin Blake, standing stiff and unreadable. Her mother, lips pressed into a thin line. Her younger siblings, barely moving. His chest tightened. "They've made a decision?" His gaze snapped back to Bianca. "And you? What do you want?" Bianca's fingers curled into fists at her sides. For a second, he thought she might say something different, something real. But then, she took a deep breath and sealed it. "I agree with them." The air left his lungs. He staggered a step forward, searching for her face. No, that's not you say." Bianca swallowed hard. "Irie, please." "Please what? Just accept this? Walk away like none of it mattered?" His voice cracked. "Tell me to my face, Bianca. Tell me this is what you really want." Finally, she looked up, and in that moment, he saw it. The hesitation, the regret, the part of her that was still his. But then she blinked, and it was gone. Her father stepped forward, his presence thick with authority. "You've overstayed your welcome, young man," Calvin said, his voice smooth, indifferent. "It's time to go back to where you came from." Irie barely spared him a glance. His eyes stayed locked on Bianca. "Is this because I don't have money, isn't it?" His voice was quieter now, raw. Bianca winced. Her silence was answer enough. "You're broke, Irie." Her voice came soft finally. "You have no money, and music." She let out a humorless laugh. "Music can't pay the bills around here." The words crushed him, squeezing his lungs like a vice. He swallowed, his throat dry. "So that's it?" Bianca looked away. He let out a sharp breath, a bitter smile twitching at his lips. "I should have known." He shook his head. "All those times you told me you believed in me. All those nights I played for you. None of it meant a damn thing, did it?" "Irie, don't." "Don't what?" His voice was suddenly calm, eerily calm. "Don't tell the truth?" He let out a hollow laugh. "You were always living in their world. I was just a visitor." Bianca's face crumpled for a second. Just a second. Then she pulled herself back together. Calvin sighed, impatient now. "Your things are packed. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Irie exhaled through his nose. His gaze drifted to the suitcases, then back to Bianca one last time. She didn't move. She didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Irie bent down, grabbed a handle of his battered suitcase, and straightened. His fingers curled tight around the worn leather. Without another word, he turned and walked away. The wrought iron gate swung shut behind him, with a hollow clang, echoing into the night. The streets of Kingston. The city was alive, horns blaring, voices rising in laughter, bass-heavy dance hall rhythms shaking the pavement. But Irie barely noticed. He dragged his suitcase behind him, his guitar pressing against his back, a familiar weight that suddenly felt heavier than ever. Bianca had thrown him away, not because she didn't love him, because he didn't have money. His jaw tightened. She was wrong. She had no idea what kind of fire burned inside him. Lifting his chin, he kept walking. One day, this city would know his name, and Bianca would regret ever letting him go. The Blake mansion. Laughter filled the grand dining hall, glasses clinking, conversations flowing like smooth wine. Calvin Blake stood at the head of the table, raising his glass. "Family, friends, I thank you all for being here tonight." A wave of polite applause rippled through the gathering. Calvin smiled, but there was no warmth in it, just satisfaction. This achievement would not have been possible without the support of a dear friend, someone who will soon become part of this family. The room hushed in anticipation. Mr. Roger Sinclair has set his eyes on one of my daughters, and from what I can see, a wedding is on the horizon. Just as he spoke, the distant hum of approaching engines grew louder. Moments later, a convoy of sleek, high-end vehicles pulled up outside the mansion. The doors swung open. Roger Sinclair stepped inside. A man of 42, his presence commanding, his broad frame draped in a perfectly tailored navy suit. His bald head gleamed under the chandelier light, his sharp eyes scanning the room with quiet calculation. The scent of his cologne, rich, heavy, possessive, clung to the air as he stepped forward. He exhaled slowly, savoring the moment. Then, with a smirk, his deep voice rumbled through the room. "Now, where is my beautiful wife-to-be?" Elsewhere in Kingston, far from the chandeliers and polished floors of the Blake mansion, Irie stood beneath a flickering street lamp, gripping his suitcase. His money was nearly gone, just enough to get him halfway to St. Mary. If he was lucky, he could sell his guitar to cover the rest of the fare. He exhaled a slow, weary breath. No more illusions, no more dreams of Bianca. Then, just as he took a step forward, a voice called out from the shadows. "Irie, is that you?" His breath hitched. That voice, deep, familiar, laced with disbelief. He turned slowly, his pulse thrumming in his ears. And there, beneath the streetlight, was someone he never expected to see again. A ghost from his past. One that could change everything. Chapter 1, End of the Dream. Chapter 2, Unfinished Melodies. "Hey, Irie, jump in." The voice cut through the hum of the Kingston night. Familiar, yet unexpected. Irie turned sharply, his body tense. Beneath the flickering streetlights, Melody, Bianca's younger sister, sat behind the wheel of a small blue sedan, her burgundy-framed glasses reflecting the glow. For a moment, he just stared. She wasn't Bianca, but something about her pulled at him. There was an understated calm in her presence, a quiet allure that stirred memories of a time before love had left him shattered. 2 years ago, the first meeting. March 15th, Bianca's 24th birthday. Irie had left the studio early, eager to surprise her. A bouquet of fresh lilies in one hand, a small velvet box in his pocket, heavy with meaning. A ring, a symbol of his devotion. He stepped into the mansion, expecting Bianca alone. But laughter echoed from deeper inside, a shadow in the hallway, and then a piercing scream. "Who are you? What are you doing inside my house?" Startled, Irie turned. A young woman stood at the top of the stairs, eyes wide. She looked like Bianca, but not quite. "Please, I'm Irie, Bianca's boyfriend." Recognition settled in her features, though suspicion lingered. Her tense shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'm Melody, Bianca's sister." Her voice was softer now, yet unreadable. Irie blinked, suddenly aware of how little she wore. A loose tank top, shorts barely reaching mid-thigh. He forced his gaze away, reminding himself why he was here. For Bianca. Melody smirked knowingly, as if reading his thoughts. She took a slow step forward, eyes flicking over the guitar strapped to his back. "I love music," she murmured. "Play something?" Still caught off guard, he hesitated before strumming a few notes. Melody leaned against the wall, listening intently. "I'm here for a week," she murmured. "Then I'm leaving for school abroad." She never said where. Even then, something about her felt like a mystery wrapped in silk. Smooth, delicate, yet impossible to unravel. A quiet friendship formed, yet whenever she looked at him, something lingered beneath the surface, something that made him wonder if she wanted him for herself. Then she was gone. And now, 2 years later, here she was again. Without hesitation, Irie opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. "Thank you," he murmured, rubbing his temples. Melody pulled into the quiet Kingston streets. Streetlights painted streaks of gold on the windshield as they drove in silence. "It's no problem," she said. Irie studied her in the dim light. She had changed, more refined, more confident, but still, that same enigmatic quality. "How did you find me?" His voice was hoarse. Melody hesitated. "I looked." Irie frowned. "You what?" "I searched for you, Irie." Her fingers tightened on the wheel. "You think I'd let you wander Kingston alone after what Bianca did?" His jaw clenched. He turned toward the window. "You should be at the family gathering," Melody scoffed. "Celebrating what? My sister betraying a good man?" Her voice was sharp, edged with something raw. A long silence stretched between them. "You deserved better," she said finally. Irie swallowed. Maybe. The weight of the night settled over them, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the steady hum of the engine and Kingston's restless heartbeat. Melody exhaled. "I always knew this would happen. Bianca was never going to choose love over money. My father made sure of that." Irie's hands curled into fists on his lap. He had always known. "Why are you here, Melody?" he asked, finally turning to face her. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she flicked on her turn signal and pulled onto a quieter road. The city lights dimmed, replaced by the occasional glow of passing street lamps. "Because I couldn't stand seeing you like that," she admitted. "Standing in the middle of the street, looking like you lost everything." "I did lose everything," Irie muttered. "No," Melody said firmly. "You lost her. That doesn't mean you lost yourself." Her words settled over him like a warm breeze, gentle but insistent. He sighed. "And what now? What do I do, Melody?" She parked on a small side street, the air thick with something unsaid. She reached over, her fingers brushing his forearm, light, hesitant. "You start over," she said. "Make them regret ever doubting you." Her touch lingered, warm. Irie looked at her then, really looked at her. Melody, the quiet observer, the one always in the background, watching, waiting. And for the first time, he wondered if she had been waiting for him. He exhaled. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this was just the beginning. Outside, Kingston breathed, cars passing, voices rising, the rhythm of the city never ceasing. Inside the car, silence stretched between them. "Where are we going?" he asked. Melody smiled. "You'll see." She pulled onto the road, the night stretching before them like an unwritten song. That night at Melody's office, the office wasn't what Irie expected. Instead of a cold, impersonal space, it had warmth, subtle elegance. Framed artwork lined the walls. The soft scent of vanilla lingered. A glass desk sat in one corner, scattered with documents, a laptop, and a long-forgotten steaming cup of coffee. "You can sleep here," Melody said, pulling a thin mattress from a closet. "It's not much, but it's better than the streets." Irie nodded, lowering himself onto the mattress with a weary sigh. The cold concrete beneath was hard, unforgiving, much like the past 24 hours. His fingers instinctively reached for his guitar. He strummed softly, letting the music carry the weight of his heartbreak, struggle, and determination. Music was the only thing Bianca hadn't stripped from him, and he would never let it go. He played until exhaustion claimed him. Before dawn. 4 a.m. A sharp car horn jerked Irie awake. His fingers twitched, reaching for his guitar. The office door creaked. Melody slipped inside, tense. "Irie, get up," she whispered. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" "We need to leave before daylight," she said, glancing at the window. "I can't let my family know you stayed here." Irie frowned, mind sluggish from sleep. "You're serious?" She nodded. Dead serious. Something in her tone made him push away exhaustion. "Why?" Melody hesitated. "If they find out, it'll be a problem. A big one." Irie's stomach tightened. "Safe from what, Mel?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she grabbed her keys. "Come on," she said. "We don't have time for this." Irie studied her, reading between the lines. He knew the Blake family well enough. Appearances meant everything. If Calvin Blake found out his rejected daughter's ex-boyfriend had stayed with Melody, there would be consequences. Still, something about her urgency felt different. "You think they'd be mad at you for helping me?" "It's not about them being mad," she said quickly. "It's about keeping you safe." Irie slung his guitar over his back, grabbed his small bag, and followed her out. The streets were still bathed in darkness, the city caught between the last breath of night and the first whisper of dawn. As they neared her car, Melody scanned the street before unlocking the doors. "Get in," she said. Irie slid into the passenger seat. "Mel," he said carefully, "what aren't you telling me?" She kept her eyes on the road. "Nothing. Liar," he said softly. A ghost of a smile flickered, but it didn't last. They drove in silence before Melody finally spoke. "Irie, what if I told you I always knew Bianca would break your heart?" His chest tightened. "Why didn't you say anything?" She laughed, hollowly. "Would you have listened?" Irie looked away. No, he wouldn't have. And Melody had seen the truth the whole time. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Diamond Mine. The city faded behind them as they drove deeper into the countryside. The further they got from Kingston, the more Irie felt the weight on his chest begin to lift. The hum of the tires on the road, the rhythmic sway of the car, it was like a slow unraveling of the stress that had coiled inside him for far too long. Irie glanced at her from the passenger seat, one hand relaxed on the wheel. "You're really going to St. Mary?" "You've only been here once," he said, his voice laced with amusement. Melody raised an eyebrow, shifting in her seat. "Who said I've only been here once?" Irie's head tilted slightly. He hadn't expected that answer. He studied her, taking in the quiet confidence in her expression, the way she seemed completely at ease. He'd always assumed the countryside was foreign to her, that she belonged to the structured chaos of Kingston. But maybe there was more to Melody than he'd realized. The surrounding landscape changed as they moved farther inland. Rolling hills, mist-covered valleys, and stretches of sugarcane fields that swayed lazily in the morning breeze. They passed through Richmond, Newport, and Cooleytown, where small roadside stalls sold roasted breadfruit, fried fish, and jelly coconuts. The scent of morning dew, damp earth, and something deeply familiar filled the air. Irie inhaled deeply, his eyes drifting closed for a brief moment. Home. When he opened them again, Melody was pulling the car up in front of a small wooden house perched on a hilltop, just across the river. The sight of it made his breath hitch. It was the same. The ornate stained glass windows, the louvered shutters, the zinc-roofed kitchen in the yard. The scent of fever grass and wild mint drifted toward him, growing wild along the edges of the property, just as they had when he was a boy. Acres of farmland stretched beyond the house, still thriving. He stepped out of the car, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Still the same," he muttered under his breath. His chest tightened with nostalgia, the past pressing into him like a familiar but worn-out jacket. Melody climbed out beside him, stretching her arms above her head. "It's beautiful," she murmured, her gaze sweeping across the rolling farmland. They walked toward the field, where a man stood knee-deep in the soil, expertly pulling cabbage from the earth. Clifton Thompson. He was broad-shouldered, his dark brown overalls stained with dirt. A peaked hat shaded his face, but even from a distance, Irie could see the sharp intelligence in his father's eyes. Clifton straightened, wiping his hands on his garment before fixing his gaze on Irie. His expression flickered, first with joy, then with something sharper, something knowing. His eyes shifted to Melody. "Who is this beautiful young lady?" His lips twitched into a smirk. "Are you my daughter-in-law?" Melody's cheeks colored instantly. "No, Mr. Thompson, I'm just..." Irie shot her a wink. "She's just a friend, Pops." Clifton chuckled but let it go. He turned his attention back to his son, studying him carefully. "So," he said slowly, "are you here to stay? Or have you finally made it rich and famous?" Irie looked away, shoving his hands into his pockets. "No, Pops. Just needed a break from Kingston." Clifton watched him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Good," he said simply. "I've been wondering when you'd finally come home." Melody smiled softly, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Thompson. I should get going, but I'll check on my friend later." Clifton extended a calloused hand. "Call me Clifton," he said. "And your name is?" "Melody." She turned, flashing Irie a small, knowing smile, before heading toward the main road. Meanwhile, in Jack's Hill, Kingston, Bianca sat on the edge of a king-sized bed, satin sheets pooling around her waist. A slow, satisfied smirk curved her lips. Last night replayed in her mind how effortlessly she had discarded Irie, how she had walked out of his life without a second thought, how Mr. Sinclair, the wealthy politician, had swept her away. Her family had celebrated her new relationship. They always had their eyes set on bigger things, and Irie? He had never quite fit into that equation. He had been a stepping stone, one she had used to get to where she truly belonged. A sleek car waited for her in the driveway. Designer clothes filled her closet. A life of luxury, a place among Kingston's elite. No regrets. Bianca stretched lazily and rose from the bed, her silk robe slipping off one shoulder as she sauntered into the bathroom. The future? hers for the taking. Back in St. Mary, Irie returned to the field, but Clifton was already waiting, hands on his hips, watching. "All right now, Irie," his father said, his voice calm but gaze sharp. "I know something's up." Irie forced a smile. "Can a man visit his father without a reason?" Clifton didn't blink. "Don't try to fool me, boy. I see it in your face." Irie sighed, tension creeping up his spine. "Fine," he muttered. "Bianca dumped me. Her parents kicked me out. That's it." Clifton nodded, not surprised. "I expected that," he said simply. "Didn't think it would happen so fast, though." Irie frowned. "Wait, you know?" Clifton hoisted a sack of cabbage onto his shoulder. "That girl was a gold digger from the start," he said evenly. "And you? You never had enough money to keep up with her. But you're only 27, son. You've got years ahead of you." Irie's stomach clenched. "Why didn't you say anything?" Clifton sighed. "Because you wouldn't have listened." Then he turned toward the house. "But that's the past," he said. "Now we have bigger things to worry about." Irie's gut twisted. Something told him his troubles were just beginning. The night had settled deep over St. Mary, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wild mint drifting in from the farmland. The wooden house stood in quiet defiance of time, its walls steeped in history, whispering secrets only the old knew how to keep. Inside, Irie sat hunched over an aged wooden table, flipping through an old photo album. His fingers traced the faded sepia-toned images of his great-grandmother, Miss Palmer, her sharp eyes frozen in time, her mouth set in that same determined line he remembered from childhood stories. The pages crackled with age, releasing the musty scent of history into the air. Outside, the cicadas hummed their evening song, a familiar rhythm from his youth. The soft glow of a kerosene lamp flickered across the room, casting long, stretching shadows against the wooden walls. Across from him, his father, Clifton, sat back in his chair, studying him carefully. The lamplight danced over his weathered face, deepening the creases of time and experience. Clifton's voice came low, measured. "Irie, now that you're back, it's time we handle some real business." Irie glanced up from the album, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "Business? What business?" Irie glanced up from the album, amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "Business? What business?" Clifton leaned in slightly, his gaze shifting toward the door, as if checking for unseen listeners. His next words carried the weight of something old, something dangerous. The diamond mine. Irie blinked. Then he burst into laughter. "Pops, come on. You sound like grandmother with her old stories. Next you'll tell me there's buried pirate treasure under the house?" But Clifton didn't laugh. His expression hardened, his dark eyes flashing with something unreadable. "Watch your tongue, boy," he said, voice low and firm. "Don't mock what you don't understand." Irie's laughter faded. There was something in his father's tone, something that made him sit up a little straighter. Clifton's hands flattened against the table, his fingers curling slightly, as if grasping an invisible truth. "I know there's treasure here. Gold, diamonds, something valuable. I feel it in my bones. And I'm close, real close." Without another word, Clifton pushed back his chair and disappeared into the back room. Irie sighed, rubbing his temple. Treasure. His father had always been a dreamer, always talking about things buried in the past. But this was a new level. Before he could dwell on it further, Clifton returned. In his hands, he carried a rust-covered cup, its surface thick with grime and time. He set it down with quiet reverence, as though placing an offering on an altar. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Look at this. This is just a piece of it." Irie hesitated, then reached for the cup, turning it over in his hands. It was heavier than he expected. He ran his thumb over the dirt-caked surface, scratching at it absent-mindedly. Beneath the years of neglect, saint engravings peeked through. He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "You sure this ain't cursed? Looks like something from Moses' time." Clifton ignored the joke. Instead, he grabbed a knife from the table and pressed it against the cup's surface, scraping away at the rust. The rough sound filled the silence, and as the slakes fell away, something gleamed beneath. Gold. Irie's smirk faded. Clifton's lips curled into a triumphant grin. "See? This is real gold, boy. And where this came from, there's more." Irie exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. He wanted to dismiss it, wanted to tell his father this was just another one of his wild fantasies. But the proof was in his hands. "All right, Pops," he said finally. "Tomorrow morning, I'll help you. But if we don't find anything, you have to let this go." Clifton nodded, but in his eyes was the gleam of a man who had already won. The next morning, a discovery beneath the earth. The sun had barely begun its slow climb over the hills when Irie and Clifton stood outside, armed with shovels and pickaxes. The air was thick with humidity, heavy with the promise of another scorching day. Without a word, they began digging. The hours passed in a blur of sweat and effort, the relentless heat pressing down on them as they overturned dry earth. Every time a shovel struck the ground, Irie found himself wondering if they were chasing ghosts. By noon, exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. He threw down his shovel, shaking his head. "See, Pops? We've dug everywhere except..." His sentence cut off abruptly. A thought sparked in his mind. Clifton, noticing the shift in his son's demeanor, stepped closer. "Except where?" Irie wiped sweat from his brow, his gaze flicking toward the house. "If there was treasure, the safest place to hide it would be under the house." Clifton's eyes widened, realization dawning. "Damn right, my gut is telling me it's there." Without another word, they hurried beneath the raised foundation, crouching low as their fingers sank into the cool, damp earth. The space was cramped, shadows pressing in from every direction. But neither man hesitated. Minutes passed in silence, the only sound the steady rhythm of shifting soil. Then, clang, both men froze. Irie's pulse thundered in his ears. He exchanged a look with his father, his heart pounding in his chest. Hands trembling, he reached down, brushing away the loose dirt. His fingers met something hard, metal. His breath caught. "Pops, there's something here." Feverishly they dug, fingers clawing through the damp earth, their sweat mixing with dust. Slowly, a massive rusted metal box emerged, its surface wrapped in rotting boards. Clifton ran his hands over the corroded metal, his breath coming fast. "This is it, boy. This is the treasure. I can smell it." The chest was impossibly heavy. With one last desperate pull, they heaved it free, tumbling into the open yard. They stood over it, chests rising and falling, gazes locked on the mystery before them. Clifton grabbed a pickaxe, gripping it tight, his knuckles white. His voice was a whisper, thick with anticipation. "Let's crack this thing open." Chapter 3.